Welcome along everyone to today's second Australasian Open Air webinar, co-hosted between ourselves at Monash University and the Digital Health CRC. My name is Professor Chris Bain, lead for Digital Health at Monash Uni, and I'm happy to host the session today and hand over shortly to our expert, Dr Hanna Pohjonen. Can we move the slides on, please? Wonderful. So I'd like to do an acknowledgement of country. So in the spirit of reconciliation, the Digital Health CRC acknowledges the traditional custodians of the country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. And they pay and we pay our respects to the elders past, present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. I'm a little caught out today, given we were late in with my introduction to Hanna, but Dr Hanna Pohjonen is an international expert in open air. Hanna has worked on many projects on the ground, particularly in Europe, particularly in the Nordic countries. She's also a co-lead of the education program of Open Air International with Dr Heather Grain from Australia, who some of you would know. And Hanna also is the founder of Roseldo Oi, which is her private company and training platform. Hanna, is that a good way to put it?
Yes.
Excellent. All right, wonderful. So you are free to ask questions in the Q&A throughout the session. I will moderate them for Hanna and read them out. Can be a bit hard at her end sometimes. But without any further ado, I will hand over to Hanna to deliver the session for today. So welcome, Hanna.
So thank you, Chris, and good afternoon, everybody. Very, very excited to be here and share my thoughts about open air. Unfortunately, I have been quite sick during weekend and my voice is quite low. So apologies, but I will try my best. So first about the agenda today. So first of all, we set the scene. So what does open air mean? What does open platform and open ecosystem mean? Then we will talk about relationship to other international standards like FHIR and OMOP. Then we will go to modular EHR. What is it? How does it differ from traditional? Then we will talk about benefits for health and care providers. And then finally, about Nordic countries as front runners in open air. But first of all, what is openEHR or open air, like we pronounce it? We pronounce it open air simply because it is easier. Open air is actually a set of standard open source specifications for storing, managing, retrieval, and exchange of health and social care data. So it is about open source specifications. We also include a specification for support of processes, especially for clinical decision support, GDL2. And those specifications we use to make data models, clinical guidelines, and various software and services. And it's important to note that the software can be both open source software, but it can also be commercial software. Originally, open air was built for persistence, and it was originally also built for primary use of data. Later on, it has also been used for data exchange, especially when we have detailed data, and also for secondary use of data. I would also like to mention that open air has actually its origin in Australia and in the UK. You have very, very good open-air experts in Australia, like Heather Crane, Heather Leslie, Evelyn Hovanga, Sam Hurd, and you have been actively involved from the very beginning. In the open-air approach, data is stored using a semantically coherent, open, international data model. So open-air is for persistence. It is vendor neutral, it is technology neutral. You can, for example, select the database you want, and it is also language neutral. And if two applications utilize open-air, these applications understand each other's data. And it is also possible to separate application level from the data level. And this is actually nothing new in the healthcare IT industry. The same happened in the imaging industry 25, 30 years ago. So imaging vendors, they started to utilize the DICOM standard, a harmonized data standard in their imaging applications. And it meant that devices produce data using DICOM, viewing stations utilize DICOM, also the vendor neutral archives utilize DICOM. So all these bits and pieces in the imaging industry understood each other's data. And this is exactly what we are going to do now with open-air and the EHR industry. In the open-air approach, data is stored in an open-air clinical data repository. We call it CDR. And we use a special language, searching language, to enable content-based, fine-grained queries to the clinical data repository. And this searching language is called AQL. I'm a big fan of AQL because I think it enables really rich data queries. And in open-air, we model clinical concepts as archetypes. They are maximal data sets, and we always represent the data, the actual data points in the context. I will tell you a little bit later on. The data model itself has been developed by clinicians, and it is governed by openEHR International. Then a little bit about the modeling levels. So you can see 3 levels here. So first of all, we have the reference model. And the reference model is like a technical foundation, the techie details that usually you as users, you don't have to know about. The clinical data repository vendors are taking care of the reference model. Reference model represents, for example, data types, archetype classifications, different types of archetypes. And then those Lego bricks, if you can say so, they are used on the next level. And the next level is archetypes. Like I said, clinical concepts represented in a maximal way. So for each clinical concepts, like blood pressure or body weight, we define a set of data points. And all data points that could be used in relation to this specific clinical concept. Then actually we can utilize these archetypes for different use cases. It is easy because we have represented the archetypes in a maximal way. These archetypes are stored in the International Clinical Library, and anybody can use them for free. So you don't even have to be a member of openEHR International, and you can start using them. And we would like these archetypes to stay international, so as little as possible localization. And we have calculated in the Nordic countries that around 90% of our archetypes we have taken straight away from the International Library. So actually no localization. Then the next level is templates. And the template level is for app development and creation of data for all sorts of document-based data sharing like XDS documents or message schemas like HL7 Fire. And on the template level, when you start, for example, building your own application, you start thinking, what kind of data should I use here? What would I like to use here? And then you go to the clinical library, you select your own, archetypes for your template, and then also the specific data points inside the archetypes. And then you have your own template. And that template is use case specific. And that is the level where you can localize. You can, for example, localize to Australian specific terminologies or any other needs. Here you can see an example archetype. This is blood pressure. And you can see a bunch of different data elements here. Here you see the actual data element, the temperature data element. But you can see a lot more. So we always have the possibility to represent this temperature value in a context. So for example, we can add environmental conditions here and body exposure. We know whether the patient was naked or under a warm cover, for example. Then we also have data elements about the protocol. So, for example, location of measurement can be included, or the actual device that we were using to measure the body temperature. So we can say that data is presented in the context. And then we can use the AQL language, the archetype query language, searching language that I already mentioned, to make content-based, fine-grained queries across this clinical data repository. In the openEHR community, we have two kinds of tools that you can use for free. And the first tool is archetype or template designer. So when I told about making your own template, then you can use this designer to pick up the right archetypes, the right data points, and build your own data model for your own use case. Then we have also the CKM. CKM comes from Clinical Knowledge Manager. And that is the international library where the archetypes are sitting. It's also a communication platform because before publishing the archetypes, we need to get a consensus about the data elements. So different clinicians and other healthcare professionals from different countries are discussing and then making the archetypes published. The template level is the country-specific level, and it includes the local use cases. It is also application-specific level. And as an example, the template can be a discharge letter. It can be a care plan. It can be a patient overview. A template consists of one or more archetypes or their parts. And the templates are used especially in the application development to provide the necessary data to user interfaces, to create the document and message schemas, to define the content for different API calls. All right, we discussed openEHR. What is then an open platform? You remember that I told that in the openEHR approach, the application level and the data level can be separated. And that is the key specific feature of openEHR. The clinical data repository is the place where the openEHR-based data is sitting. And that clinical data repository is the heart of the open platform, the main service on the open platform. There are some other shared services as well that the applications can utilize, but the clinical data repository is the main service. But the open platform is not only about openEHR, it also supports multiple open APIs, multiple open standards, and mappings in between. These open standards, they are complementary, and they are not competing with each other. This is something that I would like you to remember. We have three main open standards, and of course, terminologies. First of all, ASL7 FHIR that you may know. It is about data exchange between IT systems with various internal data models. ASL7 FHIR covers the most common data elements, but it is not intended for long-term data storage, not intended for the foundation for EHR. And then openEHR comes into the picture because openEHR is especially for persistence, for long-term data storage, and also a little bit for exchange when we talk about more detailed data sets. It is a harmonized data model, not only for most common data elements, but for all health and social care data concepts. The key element is the data repository, and a key functionality is the AQL language for different queries. Then we have OMOP, and OMOP is specifically for large-scale research, real-world evidence generation, and population-level analysis. A structured relational database schema with a set of tables and fields. OMOP defines how data elements like patient demographics, conditions, drugs, procedures, and observations are stored. And it also provides some open source analytical tools. So here you can see that we have different open standards, but clearly they have different purposes for use. I wanted to take this picture because I have seen a lot of unnecessary battle between FHIR and openEHR. Can they work together? What are the purposes for use for each of these standards? And I wanted to show this because a FHIR-based application can store to the openEHR clinical data repository, and a FHIR-based application can search from the openEHR clinical data repository. The key thing here to understand is the mapping between openEHR and FHIR. And openEHR International and HL7 International are working hard to make these mappings practical and usable for everybody. Here you can see a link that you might want to look at. It's openFire.com, and it talks about open source specifications between these two standards and also an open source execution engine to really make these mappings in real time. I also wanted to show this because in Finland, actually, openEHR modeling is under HL7 Finland. So these guys, they work together, and HL7 Finland is the first HL7 affiliate to be a member of openEHR International. So I think that it is already for 2 years that HL7 Finland has been the member. So always remember the right tool for the right job philosophy. So use FHIR when the focus is interoperability. When you are seeking for a connector. Excellent for real-time lightweight data exchange and app development. But if the focus is data persistence and meaning, you will need openEHR, the semantic foundation, excellent for long-term vendor-neutral, clinically precise data storage and modeling. And then finally, OMOP, an excellent research and analytics powerhouse. And in addition, there are terminologies that you can utilize in all these standards. They are complementary, not competing, and the strategic success often involves understanding how to combine them. openEHR actually enables a totally new way to build EHRs. So instead of one vendor bundle or a monolith, this is how we call them, we can build a multi-vendor ecosystem. And here you can see that the EHR is split to functionalities or modules, and they can come from different vendors. Vendor A, B, C, etc. And instead of one vendor bundle, we have this multi-vendor ecosystem. And it means that you can really select best of breed functionalities from different vendors. The modules are replaceable, independent. It is a true multi-vendor ecosystem. And you can also, as a care provider, build your own applications easy and fast using low-code and no-code tools. So, for example, if you want to have a specific entry form, for example, for cardiology or for researchers, you can also add it as a module here on the application level. All right, then we have the openEHR clinical data repository here. And once this module produces data, it is stored here, and straight away another module can utilize it. And then there are some other shared services also that can be utilized by these applications. For example, mapping services, data privacy and security services, and so on. And the storage is using openEHR, but these applications can communicate using any open standard. So open APIs are supported. So we have actually two approaches. We have the traditional monolith and the modular EHR. The traditional monolith is one vendor approach. User interface, business logic, data repository, data model and workflow, they are all in one integrated software. And it is quite hard to change a specific system functionality to an equivalent one from another vendor. In the modular EHR, it consists of functional modules from several vendors of your own choice. And all these things, interface, business logic, data repository, data model, and workflow, they have been separated. So this means that the modules are replaceable, modules are independent. On the traditional side, we use a proprietary data model, and the data is stored in a proprietary internal database. And it means that heavy and complicated data migration is needed when the system is changed. In the modular side, we use open semantically harmonized data model. We use the openEHR clinical data repository, and migration is not needed when system changes. What are the benefits then for health and care providers? First of all, no vendor lock-in. I think that is the beauty of openEHR and other open standards. The ownership, the true ownership of data is with the care delivery entity and the patient, citizen, him or herself. You can always access the full data, not only narrow messages that the vendors define. You can always preserve innovation because you can simply add new modules on top of the data, and you can quickly adapt to unexpected situations like COVID was. You can combine data for decision support and, of course, for artificial intelligence. You can access full data. You can replace modules independently, and there is no need for expensive, risky migrations when system parts are changed. You can renew your IT infrastructure in a stepwise way and create and track cross-organizational care pathways. Here you can see the current hotspots in the European openEHR market. So we have a big project in Catalonia, in Spain. The UK has many openEHR projects. In Germany, every university clinic is actually connected to an openEHR clinical data repository, and we have 140 hospital-based openEHR clinical data repositories as well. The Netherlands is really moving fast, big openEHR projects and procurements. And then we have also little Slovenia that is like a role model for openEHR. And then we have the Nordics, and especially Norway, Sweden, and Finland, where I come from. And in the following, we are going to look at the Nordics in more details. The Nordic openEHR development is a little bit different from some other markets. Maybe the Netherlands is the closest when we look at the features, because the Nordic openEHR development has been vendor-driven. And this means that the dominant electronic health record players, local players, they had chosen openEHR as their internal data model to build openEHR-based products. And these EHR vendors, they used to be monoliths, but then they turned to openEHR gradually, step by step. And this resulted in a wide adoption because these guys, they had big market shares, and then they started to upgrade their products, and then openEHR came into the picture. And if we look at these three countries, for example, Norway, 75% of hospital care is already open air based, and 50% on the GP side. Then the Swedish market. In Sweden, we have 21 regions, and already 19 are on their way to utilize open air. And then we have 2 remaining regions, and they are already looking for a open air based alternative. So Sweden is really moving to open air. And then my own country, Finland, we have 5.5 million citizens, and the data of 3 million citizens is already open air based. So we are on our way as well. And this has been like a stepwise modernization journey for the companies, from a monolith to a open air based application portfolio. And end customers have actually been strongly involved in the transition, even financially. They have had all sorts of co-development programs in these countries. And here you see a couple of companies that I wanted to mention. So DIPS and Patient Sky, they come from Norway. They are on the Norwegian modular EHRs. Then Campio is a Swedish one, and Tieto is a Finnish one. And Tieto is actually present in some other countries as well. And also nowadays in Spain, in Catalonia. So why did several Nordic vendors then choose open air? The main driver is that they wanted to find a differentiator against US monoliths. So they wanted to show something that is different, more open. And I think that they pushed the US monoliths away in a very nice and effective way, actually. The Nordic countries, they saw that open air is a ready data model. It's easy to download and start using. It fits for various use cases, and there is a established international governance. I think that no vendor should really start competing with their own data model. They should have full focus on functionalities, how to utilize data in an intelligent way, how to create new insights to the data. That is the competitive advantage or a differentiator. Nordic vendors saw that with open air, they can quickly adapt to changing user needs. It's a lot faster to make new software with the open air method because it is template driven, it is model driven software development. You can easily keep up with innovations. You can easily combine data from different sources like EHRs, devices, wearables. Also, patient-reported data can be included. And what is really, really important and topical, it is a perfect foundation for AI and machine learning. It is easier to involve users in the application development. And what is also important, the vendors understood that they cannot be experts in all. And they can collaborate with other vendors. So OpenAir enabled a multi-vendor ecosystem with complementing modules. And finally, going international to other open ecosystems, it is easier and faster because the applications that you have built, they fit to other countries, to other open ecosystems as well. We call it application portability. And actually, we are already on the next step. So we have started to mix and match. So we have the portable applications from different vendors. We put different things together in different ways. So we select best of breed modules from this vendor and this vendor. We do our own development. We have new niche applications from startups and small companies as well. And data can also be located on various open platforms. So it does not have to be only one, it can be a federated set of different open platforms and various data sources and various open standards. But you need to think what is the purpose for use when you make your data strategy and you select the open standard. Here you can see some openEHR vendors from the Nordic space especially. So on the right-hand side, you can see the EHR vendors, but Tieto and Cambio, they are also open platform vendors. Better and Vita Group are also open platform vendors present in the Nordics. Dedalus is actually the biggest EHR vendor in Europe. Imagine Care is a remote monitoring company. And then everybody knows Microsoft and EY. And then here you can see an Australian company, Ocean Health. And they are actually the vendor behind the CKM, Clinical Knowledge Manager. So they are also present in the Nordic countries. I told you that the openEHR market has been very vendor-driven in the Nordics. But actually, it is now moving to end customer-driven projects as well. And I wanted to take one example here. This is region Stockholm, capital region in Sweden, and Karolinska University Hospital. And they had a monolith and they wanted to renew. And I also helped them in the pre-procurement phase to think that what is the right approach for our region? What is it what we are aiming at? And they concluded to buy a clinical data repository, a openEHR-based data foundation. You can see it here. And they started to build applications utilizing that CDR, and they also acquired new applications. And at the same time, they renewed their journal system. So here you can see it says like user interface because the journal system has the data storage here on the data level. So it is like front end. And then finally, they also started to map and migrate legacy data. So their legacy monolith was Take Care, and they started to map it to openEHR. So also the legacy data is now being stored here on the openEHR foundational level. We also organize Nordic hackathons for interoperability, both openEHR and FHIR. And actually last year, we had a big hackathon. We had 80 developers from different companies. I was helping the application vendors, and they built applications on top of 2 open platforms. And we had an imaginary patient case, and we built applications for coordinated health and social care. What was important was that it was not only application vendors, It was also end users, authorities, and patient representatives in the hackathon. And now we are going to redo in November. It's not always rosy. We have had challenges as well. So we have had a long journey. And the biggest challenge, I think, that has been with the speed. So it took so long a time to modernize the EHR software of these dominant EHR vendors. And also the speed, how to support new, smaller players, startups to enter. The hackathons, they help in this aspect. Legacy data integration, migration is always difficult, but now in the AI-based tools are going to help a lot, and we are going to implement them starting from Sweden. And then it has been also difficult to make procurement teams to understand and adopt ecosystem thinking, because when they buy modules, it is a little bit different from buying a whole monolith. So you need to have predetermined architecture rules and processes. And then something we were not very good at, to gain governmental support. I hope that Australia is better in this, because owners and resources are also needed for the national activities. And only now, I think, the Nordic governments see the value of openEHR, and they have started to support. And of course, we had also unnecessary battles between openEHR and FHIR, but now I think we have overcome that. And then finally, some success factors for openEHR projects, maybe something to learn from. I think that it is very important that the data sharing culture is present in the market. And I think we can tick the box here for all Nordic countries, because we have had these document-based national data sharing infrastructures for years back, like you also in Australia with my records. And then the legal environment should also be favorable for sharing. And what is important is to have a broad enough understanding among the end users and decision makers about the benefits of open ecosystems. And this is actually what we are doing here in this webinar as well, to build awareness. And there should be readiness within the vendor community for collaborating and acting in open ecosystems. But when you start, make it stepwise. Start with a data platform. Start gradually separating data from applications and select a high-value use case. Something that you can show to the clinicians, hey, this is something really cool, and it will add value. And then finally, if you want to learn more, we have built a training ecosystem. We have 7 vendor-neutral e-learning courses where you can study at your own pace, but you can also communicate with our recognized educators, not only me, but other recognized educators as well, and also with your team members. We have openEHR awareness course that is for anybody. You don't have to know anything about openEHR before you start. openEHR clinical is for healthcare professionals. Interoperability for leaders brings openEHR, FHIR, and OMOP together. Then we have 2 modeling courses, openEHR technical course, where we use a open source open platform so that you can start building your own applications. And then we have openEHR and clinical decision support course. And here you can see my contact details. So if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me. And please get connected in LinkedIn. I'm quite active there, so you can learn more about the open air market and open air itself.
Thank you very much, Hanna. In the webinars I run from within Monash, we usually do an audible round of applause now. I won't shock people on the call by doing that. Just a quick note too, that this is on the screen now is some other work by one of the CRC partners, being RMIT University, a recent project and this national report release looking at the issue of workforce competencies for clinical information modelling in Australia, and things like openEHR are a foundational consideration there. I would just encourage everybody to take this time to ping any questions into the Q&A, please, whilst we have Hanna on the line. The other point I would make is that for those of you unaware, it's only in the last few months there's actually been a national report or national interoperability framework type document released by the ADHA, which is probably the first time I can recall that openEHR has been specifically called out at a national level as a key part of the technology environment, which I think is very interesting. And so these seminars, this is the second of two, are very timely with both that CIM report and that recent release. I'm hoping that people are typing some questions as we speak, just waiting to see if any pop up. So Hanna, just quickly for you, I mean, the longer I've worked in healthcare and in health IT, the more I think culture's critical, be that organisational culture or discipline culture, or in relation to my question, the culture of a country. So what is it, do you think, about the Nordic countries that means they've done so much work in this space? Is it a deep distrust of American capitalism? Is it a sense of community and sharing? Is it a fierce independence? What do you think is at play there?
Oh, this is a fantastic question. And I think that because we are tiny countries, we have always been forced or we have been able to collaborate with other countries. So we know that, for example, our languages, they are rare languages. So we need to collaborate. So I think the culture of collaboration is somehow in our blood. And then another thing is that Nordic countries, they really work close together. So, for example, Sweden and Finland, we are very much like friends, only in the athletic competitions.
Not in the World Cup.
Yeah. But anyway, so I think it's the culture of collaboration. You are right. It matters.
Absolutely. So there's a couple of questions there, Hanna. One from Mehmet. So what's the best way to stay involved with openEHR and stay up to date with announcements and key initiatives?
Yeah. So you can, of course, be a member of openEHR International. So there are different levels of membership. Even as an individual, I think it's a very, very little amount of money that you have to pay. You can be an organizational member, and then you are in the community, and you hear and the news are shared, etc. But you don't have to be a member. You can just go to openEHR International website and you start exploring. And please look at this discourse, because many openEHR related people are there talking about different aspects. And if you have a specific question, don't hesitate to just go to discourse, ask a question, and people start collaborating with you. We are a very, very friendly community, and even vendors that are competing in products, they are actually helping each other, and especially through discourse.
Thank you. And I've found this to be true. It's a little bit of a feature of the world of IT, but it's also a feature of the health IT standards community, that people know the only way they progress is to work together and be open, even sometimes when they're in a competitive marketplace. Thanks, Hanna. Another question from Lian. Basically, to cut it short, in Finland, what role did the national government play in supporting and coordinating the transition towards modernisation and open standards?
Yeah. So I think that in the Nordic countries, our governments, they have been a little bit slow. And regarding openEHR, as I already mentioned, they have just now started to understand that openEHR is part of the IT standards picture. And I think that they understood because they saw that, actually, most of our vendors are utilizing openEHR, and we have a openEHR ecosystem, even if the national activities were not supporting it. And now the support is coming. And these hackathons, it's a very good example because the authorities are there as well. They want to learn and they want to encourage this openEHR development. And they are actually in the openEHR courses. So that is also very, very good. So they can communicate with other people and understand why.
Very good. Thank you. I'm not seeing any other questions there at the minute. Please do take the chance to post some questions. There's no such thing as a silly question. Hanna is a very deep expert in this area. Just another one from me, Hanna. Is there a sort of group or groups on LinkedIn dedicated to openEHR? Because often there's a group set up or a community set up. Are you aware of anything like that?
Yes, there is a openEHR group that is like cross countries, but then there are many like country specific groups and affiliates as well. But but I think that the best thing is to start getting connected to different openEHR people. Look at what they are posting, including me as well, and learn. And then of course I encourage everybody to take some education as well as the foundation. But then you are up to date and you see and you meet like-minded people as well. But you need to be aware of some challenges as well and how to mitigate them and so on. So it's not, black and white. In all approaches, we have our limitations as well.
Yes. And look, I don't know the age group of the audience online, but I would observe a transition from when I started to move out of medicine in the late 90s to now, in terms of the ability to be part of communities is infinitely easier than it ever was before because of social media, because of online presence, but equally the ability to get training in diverse ways, including online with people like yourself, but in other ways as well, is infinitely easier than ever before. So I hope people appreciate, perhaps younger people, that the tool sets and accessibility of meeting people, becoming part of a community, learning things is infinitely easier than it used to be.
And I will actually be in Sydney for 1 month this your spring, our autumn.
Yes.
So please get connected and we can meet up. I already got some invitations. So yeah, but one thing that I would like to add about the community is the CKM, where these archetypes are being considered and then later on published. So there is an expert pool. As a clinician or other healthcare professional, you can log in and say, hey, this is my expertise. I would like to get involved and get to the discussions and voting and so on.
Yes.
So please
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. This has come up in the Sparked initiative in Australia, which you might have heard of too, where I think some people out in healthcare, for instance, who don't see themselves as IT people, they feel the pain, they know the problems, they don't realise they can actually participate. It's about their clinical knowledge and the frontline experience they bring is important in this. We cannot be having technical people sitting in a room in isolation trying to devise these standards, or else we end up with bad standards. So a very good point, Hannah. Very good point.
Yeah, and I think that openEHR is very, say, clinician friendly, because clinicians have developed it. So it is easy to visualize and understand. You don't have to have any techie or IT skills. So you can easily get in.
Yes. And just to reinforce that, Hannah has made reference to the Australian heritage of openEHR. And people like Sam Hurd still is a clinician, I think, is getting on in his career. People like Heather Leslie started as a clinician. Hugh Leslie started as a clinician. I suspect Evelyn did as well. I'm pretty sure Evelyn Habenga did as well. So it's not like these people have all started in the IT world and came to health. It's actually the other way around. So, look, I'm conscious we're at time now. And people have been very diligent. We've kept a majority online for the hour, which is wonderful. Hannah's left her details there for you to reach out on the previous slides, but she's very visible. She has a very unique name, which is not hard to find on LinkedIn. And I'm sure if you just Google her, even Hannah openEHR will probably get you straight to Hannah. So thank you very much, Hannah, for all your time and expertise. Thank you to everybody online. Thank you to Sam Schult, who I think is still on in the background. Thanks for helping us organise these, Sam. And thank you for the Digital Health CRC for supporting them and coming up with the idea to do these. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you for inviting me. And thank you, Chris, especially for moderation.
Thank you, Hannah. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.